soft body dynamics to add a little bit of jiggle to an object. Now this would be something that you would add to a character, probably like to a face in the cheeks or the jowls or the belly. Because we haven't used the cow for a while, I'm going to use the cow. I'm just going to create an animation quickly that has the cow moving right to left in a fairly extreme fashion for a camera view. And so it gets jerked around, and if any of the loose parts should be flying a bit on here. Get a little bit of spin. Now, if I just apply soft body dynamics right to it, I calculate it, we get a certain amount of something going on. Not exactly what we want. We've got kind of a lazy points, springy kind of action. But the thing is, we only want it to happen to certain parts of the cow. Now, the way I'm going to do it, the way I'm going to approach this, is I could do it with point sets, but I think in this case, I could do it with surfaces too. If I just wanted that oscillating motion to happen to certain surface named parts, I could apply it that way. But when you're working with weight maps, you have the advantage of it being able to fall off over the space of time. So let's quickly pop into Modeler, and you can see how I've kind of pre-cooked this particular object, and this object is on the CD. It's called cow weight. And take a look at, I have one weight map that's applied exclusively to the belly area because I want that to jiggle, and then another one for the neck weight, and it also happens to be on the tail. And the way this is done, let's just add a brand new weight, and we'll have we can apply this to the head, so we're going to call it head weight. And I'm going to have the initial value be 0 because I want to add some weight on here. And I just wanted to apply solely to the head area. So what I like to do, because I have the tendency of being extremely sloppy, if I know I'm not going to want something applied to something, I'm just going to get it out of there. And the way I do that is select it and hide it. I usually use the hotkeys, but under display we have the buttons. I'm going to hide selected. This does not delete them in any way. It just merely gets them out of the way. Nothing can be affected when it's hidden. So now I want to apply a weight map that's very strong up here and then fading off towards the back. So I'm going to go to map. I could just go in and airbrush it. And in some cases I would do that. We can see in my viewport here, it's not very even, so I'm going to undo that. And I want to have a fairly, let's say, accurate fall off. So why don't we just go with our, open up our numeric panel here. Got head weight selected, good. I'm going to switch to weights. And I want the fall off to be radial. And I want it to be real strong on top and fall off like that. And let's make it 100% here. And by right clicking on my screen, I can choose how this will be applied. So hit apply. And there we are. And so now I've applied a head weight to my object. Go back to display and unhide. Have my whole object. I've applied a new weight. So synchronize this with layout. Switch to layout. I go to my cow weight. SoftFX has been applied. Go to my operators. I'm going to apply it only for the head weight. You can see it's actually giving me a representation in a layout, which is very nice of it. Now let's calculate this. And that is completely unnecessary. But you can see at some point here it kind of makes sense until it gets completely out of line, so we just make some adjustments. And here's another case where we can actually see our adjustments as it's happening. Little too little. Let's try this. And maybe it's very slight. Now we could be adding a secondary motion to this as well. No, that's not too bad. But I've already created my belly weight. Oh, look at that. I don't even have to recalculate that. Although I might, because I like recalculating. You see there's a little bit of motion to the belly. And most of the time, a little bit goes a long way. It takes very little to sell the motion sell the idea that that is not a solid, fixed 3D object. It's actually got a little bit of life to it. Let's give the belly a little more motion. And actually, I don't like that twist in there, so I'm going to go and change my keyframe just a bit. And the other keyframe. And now it will require me to re-render this. Actually recalculate. I think I'll do it with a few more frames because the action seems to be going on. You can see in Modeler I do have my belly weight, and that is the area that is being affected. Now if I was really particular, I could go in and probably with the airbrush brush in like in between where the bone structure might be, the ribs, so that the ribs would be like very hard to be like green, and in between it and on the edge is where the pink and the orange would start kicking in. So that would give the idea that there's an underlying structure, and actually it would do that very well. But for purposes of example, this works pretty well. Now we have that second operator to work with, and I'm going to apply that to the neck weight. Now let's just calculate that. Let's see how the settings. I can see once again it is way too extreme, and I need to adjust some of my settings. It's very nice that we get some real-time feedback. I don't always trust it, but it's still pretty cool. So we've tweaked our settings a little bit, and we actually have a fairly nice motion. A little bit too extreme there, but the cow's getting beaten up a lot. But now I have this head weight map, and I'd like the head kind of have something going on too. And what if I want to have a separate weight map for the tail? Right now the tail and the neck have the same weight map. But we already have that head weight map. What if I want to have a third operator? Well, we can do this. We can add another instance of SoftFX. And this time I'm going to go in and select the head weight. Make the settings a little bit different. And calculate this. And sure enough, we have two instances of SoftFX. I don't know what the limit is, but the calculation time will certainly be going higher and higher. But we have three operators with slightly different values working on this cow. We do have a scene on the CD called Cow Jiggle, which I had spent a little bit of time on to get a fairly reasonable calculation showing how the cow will jiggle through the use of SoftFX. It's not too bad. And once again, this is just one example using the cow. I like using the cow. You can see how it's moving around in a fairly realistic manner. I might want to do a little bit more under the chin or possibly with the ears. But you can certainly apply this to any organic models that you may want, or in the place of using cloth effects, Jello in a baggie. If you have the occasion that you need to animate that, in the world of advertising especially, you're sometimes asked to animate unusual substances with unusual dynamic characteristics. So Lightwave actually does a fairly good job at making these pretty complex calculations and setups fairly accessible, especially through the use of SoftFX and HardFX.